Uh, Hi there, everyone. I'm Sam Challey from Northwest Surrogacy Center. I'm the Director of Client Development here. I'm really excited to have you all logged on today to talk with us about one of the most important aspects of surrogacy, and especially in the sense that I feel like it's something that I can't do justice. So I feel incredibly fortunate to have both Kasia and Alex here to share their experiences with their intended parents. Both are two-time surrogates with Northwest Surrogacy Center. I know that from our perspective, these stories are something that simply we can't do justice to without having their help. Um, so I'm going to have Kasia and Alex go ahead and introduce themselves, and we'll go from there.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex. I'm 29 years old. I live in Eugene, Oregon, and I'm married with 3 children.
And I'm Kasia, and I live in Eugene as well, and I am 32 and married with 2 children.
As we have the discussion today, I would love it if the participants could go ahead and put their questions into the question box here. We'll be doing our best to address everything. We may not have time to get to everybody's questions, but please feel free to participate and get those questions answered. I think first and foremost, when we have perhaps the biggest and best question here, which is why did you want to become a surrogate? And Alex, you want to start?
Sure. Why I wanted to be a surrogate was because, of course, to help people have children and be parents, but I didn't really know about surrogacy until a friend of mine had asked. Luckily, she was able to get pregnant, but it definitely planted a seed in my mind to give that gift to somebody else. I had my own children. I had successful pregnancies. I enjoy being pregnant. So for me, I thought I'm going to look into, becoming a surrogate. I didn't know really anything if it was legal or anything like that. So I began my search and found Northwest Surrogacy Center.
Yeah, and for me, I had never heard of surrogacy until I watched a show a little over 6 years ago, and a couple was a surrogate for their neighbor. And the next day after watching that, I looked into it and saw that it was something that we could do here in Oregon. And once I clicked on the compensation part, all the feelings just hit me, and I felt like I could really benefit my life. I could buy a house for my 2 children with my husband. And then, I started to look into what it would entail, and bringing life into this world for another couple was just huge. So yeah, that was the compensation mixed with creating a family was just perfect.
So I imagine this was a little complicated for your families, and we've got a good question that just got submitted here. What did your partner say when you told them that you wanted to be a surrogate? Were your friends and your family supportive of you through all of that?
For me, when I had brought it up to my husband, at first he thought, no, there's no way, because he didn't know. He was thinking of me and protecting me, with all the emotions that come with the thought of that. So we watched actually a documentary that Northwest Surrogacy Center had put out, and it just showed all the aspects of surrogacy between the intended parents, the surrogate, her children, her family, and it kind of painted this big picture. And after that, my husband was like, absolutely, we should do this. It showed Northwest Surrogacy Center also being just a great support and advocacy for the surrogate. So we felt really comfortable. My other family, my parents, my grandparents, were a little unsure, a lot of questions, as many people, don't really know. My grandma thinking, oh my gosh, you're going to have a biological child and give it up for adoption, which, I didn't know until looking into it that there's an egg donor and all the ins and outs. So it was good. I definitely had the support, but it was through, Northwest Surrogacy Center and educating myself and my family.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. I immediately came home from work that day after looking into surrogacy, and I told my husband about it, and he was like, no way, what? No, we're done having kids. And I was like, it's not for us, it's for another couple. And he just was mostly concerned about what the life would be like for this child. Would we get to know this child? Would we see them raise this child? And then of course, with working with Northwest Surrogacy Center, we were able to be matched up with a family that wanted a connection and would meet what my husband wanted and what I wanted in a relationship with intended parents. So we were able to have the support and knowledge of, I guess, being a big family and, creating a second bond with another family. And the support was really strong.
So another question that we have that was typed in here, can you tell us a little bit about how you decided which sets or what kind of intended parent you wanted to work with, or did you have input on that?
So initially for me, I wanted to have a really close relationship. So I wanted to work with a couple that was in the United States initially. And when I met with Northwest Surrogacy Center and kind of seeing their intended parents were international, it kind of opened my mind. I really wanted to have a connection. So I think for me, the language barrier was a little challenging. I was worried about how that would go, but they totally matched us perfectly. And I didn't really have, either single parent, heterosexual couple, homosexual couple. I just wanted to have a connection with my intended parents.
Yeah, I was very open to working with any family. But the day that I got the profile for the couple that we worked with, I just immediately felt like that was it. And being a gay couple from France, I've never been to France. Well, I have been to France now, but I had never been to France, and I was excited to work with a couple internationally. So it was a lot of fun.
Got it. And can you? So another question that we have is what was your relationships, or what were they like with the families after the babies were born?
So after that was really when for me and my intended parents, our relationship really began. Before that, it was just, talking, texting, video, chatting, because we were still getting to know each other. But after their daughter was born, our relationship just took off. We spent almost 6 weeks together after she was born. So we really got to spend time together and, create a bond and joke and laugh and see them become parents and them around my children. So I feel like after the birth was really when our relationship took off.
Very similarly. Yeah, that is mine as well. The beginning of the relationship was, a lot of awkward texts and emails like, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Kind of feeling out where we wanted our relationship to be and how it should become. And really when the first daughter that I had was born is when it just all clicked. We shared so many meals together in the 3 to 4 weeks they were here after the baby was born, and my children hanging out with them and them hanging out with us, and just being normal people in person. We just became just the best of friends.
And Kisha, as far as that is concerned, do you see that kind of relationship ongoing, or how frequently do you have contact with your IPs?
Yeah, it's great. I think we were all a little hesitant when we were getting near the delivery of our first surrogacy journey, because being a surrogate, I didn't know how I would feel when the baby was born. You know, they always say, like, people always ask, I mean, are you going to have an emotional attachment? Is it going to be hard to give away a baby? I always told them, no, it's not my baby. But as soon as I held her and I felt that there was not that emotional connection, it was like holding my best friend's daughter for the first time. I just knew it was going to work out and I would want to do it again for them. They wanted additional children. So they came back a year later to visit us here in Oregon with their daughter, and we began the process for a second journey, ultimately resulting in twins. So they have 3 children, and we used some of the compensation from the second journey to take a trip over to Europe, me and my 2 children and my husband, to spend 3 weeks with the couple and their 3 children in Paris and Greece. So it's a really strong relationship at this point.
Fun.
Yeah.
And Alex, how about you?
Yeah, so we talk to our IPs weekly. We get pictures and updates. We actually, my husband and I went for our 5-year anniversary to go visit them for 2 weeks after their surrogate daughter was born. And we were in the process of starting a new journey with them for their sibling, for their daughter. And so they actually had a trip planned here this summer, but with COVID and everything going on, they canceled, unfortunately. But we still talk every week, and my children love to see the pictures of their kids. And we just, we're like extended family. I still receive gifts and things from their parents, and we send them gifts. I mean, we have birthdays on the calendar. We have all the, the milestones, everything. So we talk frequently.
Got it. So another question here that one of our participants typed in is, there are many agencies. Why did you choose to work with Northwest Surrogacy Center?
Oh, for me, when I did my research or looking into agencies, I just felt this draw to Northwest Surrogacy Center with just everything. So I felt comfortable initially just kind of filling out the intake form and sending it in. And then what really got me was realizing all the moving pieces and parts. And when my husband and I went and visited with Northwest Surrogacy Center, it was like we were welcomed like a family. They were so welcoming, and just it made me feel at ease. And words can't express how that feels, because going into it kind of blindly, I was nervous and was unsure, and so Northwest Surrogacy Center just really helped make me feel at ease. I was asked to do an independent surrogacy where there is no agency. And for me, I would not, my husband and I would not feel comfortable, because like I said, there's so many moving pieces between the legal team and the surrogate and the intended parents and the medical. I mean, there's just all these pieces, and Northwest Surrogacy Center has always been there whenever if there's something coming up or anything, and they are just, for me, it was just incredible.
Yeah, same. As soon as I clicked on several different Surrogacy Center agencies on my first Google search, and the amount of information that is on Northwest's page is so helpful. And reading the bios about potential surrogates on there, and then really, upon filling out the intake form, talking to somebody at Northwest Surrogacy Center to just answer really random general questions, it just instantly, I knew that it was going to be a really good partnership, and that they would always be there to support me as a surrogate. And yeah, I felt really, really comfortable with that.
Hi. So Keisha, can you describe a little bit about the day when your surrogate baby was born, and what it was, what that experience was like with the IPs?
Yeah, so we so when I was pregnant with my first surrogacy, I was pregnant with a girl, and um, we all drove to the hospital together bright and early in the morning for a scheduled C-section, and because I had 2 prior C-sections, and we sat in that room for 2 hours while they're doing the monitoring and getting me all set up. Um, we have a lot of photos of the dads just sitting there nervously, like anticipating what would come next. And my husband was there kind of cheering him on, letting him know, like, this is what they're doing now, because he's been through it a couple of times. So we went to the operating room, and my husband was by my side, and we were in a room where the intended parents were able to see into the operating room through a clear glass door. So they could see their daughter being pulled out of me. They could hear her first cry. It was a very emotional experience. And then they immediately brought her to them, where they were able to do skin to skin, while I was, getting sewn back up and brought into a recovery room. Within 20 minutes of being in the recovery room, the intended parents came in with their baby, wheeling her in the little bassinet, and they were so proud, and they just wanted to share her with me immediately. Neither one of us knew how we would feel. But instantly we held her, I held her, and we just felt so happy and proud that throughout the next couple of days during the hospital stay, they were in my room probably more than they were in their own room, just holding their baby, sharing her with me, and my children got to come visit her as well. And yeah, it was just the best.
Got it. And how about you, Alex?
Oh, so I was induced. I decided to be induced because my IPs were from France, so they flew here, and we kind of had a limited time limit. And so I was induced, and we showed up at the hospital at 5 a.m. And they were all dressed up, like ready, like this was just going to happen within the next hour or two. So my husband and I were kind of like, okay, it's going to be, could be 8 hours, 10 hours. We're not sure, So then they realized, okay, yeah, we can kind of relax. And they went back to their Airbnb and got some more things together. And we just spent the next 6 hours while I was getting into labor watching the Food Network channel, and I was just daydreaming about eating food. Mm-hmm. And we were talking, and that was another chance, an opportunity for us to, talk and get to know one another. Then when things really got intense, I had always vocalized, they can be in the room as much as they want or comfortable with. And so my husband was a very good help too, because it was a chaotic birth. Their daughter was in the wrong position, so they had to move me and put oxygen. And so every step of the way, my husband was like, okay, this is why they're doing this. And so they were there the whole time in the room with me. And when it got time to push, they were kind of like, where should we go? And I was like, your daughter's being born. So they were very, right there. And so then their daughter was born, and they did skin to skin immediately, and we were all in the room together. I don't remember what time. I think it was like 2 a.m. and we were all tired, but we were all so happy, and just our nurse was taking pictures for us and just really embracing the moment that just happened, and their daughter, and seeing them finally hold their daughter they've wanted for so long was just, words can't describe it. And it was just, this is why I chose surrogacy, was for that moment. And then we were, after that, put next to each other in the baby side of the hospital, where they put you after you deliver a baby. So we were right next to each other. So I gave them milk, and was, if they had any questions or anything, we were right there. And every time she went to the bathroom, it was excitement. And every time she, ate and burped, it was like this, every little thing. And it was so magical for me and my husband to see, and my children, because they were able to come and see her.
A follow-up question to that, and this is for me. Tell me a little bit about your kids' reaction to all of this stuff. As far as what do you tell them? Or what did you tell them?
I've always been very honest with them from the beginning. I did my IVF injections with them walking by me in the bathroom, oh, doing your injections today, explaining to them. It actually really helped explain to start the conversation about creating life and children and how they're born and ways that you can create a family. And they think of the siblings or the children that I had as kind of long distance siblings or cousins almost. So they, coming to the hospital and seeing them, they just felt as if it was seeing a cousin, or they felt happiness and all the same feelings that I felt a little bit younger level.
Yeah, my children, my son was a year and a half when I started, and my daughter was 4. So I really explained to my daughter, the process. And like Keisha said, I was just honest from the get-go, this isn't your sibling because there's the egg donor and it's their sperm. I mean, I really laid it out. And so my son at the time just thought, as my belly got bigger, that I ate his toys. He would say that all the time. Mom, you're eating my toys. My toys are in your belly. And I was, no, it's a baby. But when we did our second journey, he was 5. So he really understood it. And my belly growing, they wouldn't necessarily feel the baby move or kick or anything, but they just knew, mom's carrying a baby for somebody else, and they were not afraid to say that out in public.
Yes.
That's not our baby. That's not my brother or sister.
That's not, yeah.
And we get sideways looks of what? But yeah, my kids I just from the get-go was honest with them, and they totally understood it. And yeah, they look at the surrogate children I had as like, yeah, extended family, cousins. They ask about them, they talk to them,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got it. So here's another question that we have is, were there any specific requests from your intended parents that you didn't feel comfortable with or comfortable doing as far as lifestyle, diet, or etc.?
No, not for me. No, my intended parents were really hands off when it came to how I went through the pregnancy. They would, they said, you've had 2 very healthy children yourself. I trust you. Just, follow of course, the guidelines outlined in the contract as far as traveling too late in a pregnancy, things that a doctor would not recommend. So it was really relaxed. And I appreciated that, because nothing would be worse than doing something to harm this child while I'm pregnant. I can't imagine putting myself in danger. If anything, I think I was probably more protective and careful with everything I did, because this was such a special experience that I cared so much about it. So it was really nice having a relaxed relationship when it came to that.
Yeah, that was the same for me. My IEPs were very, trustworthy. Like Keisha said, they had met my 2 children. They knew I was capable. And that was the thing too, is just trusting one another. And like Keisha said, is, things my doctor wouldn't recommend, of course, no, I wouldn't do that. But they were very relaxed, and there wasn't anything that they had asked me I wouldn't feel comfortable doing at all.
So, and I don't know if this happened for either of you, but did you have your IPs come to any ultrasounds or doctor's appointments with you during the pregnancy? And if so, how did that feel?
Yeah, so my IPs came for both of the 20-week ultrasounds, and they, since being there from France, they booked an Airbnb and were able to come for, I think, about a week, maybe 10 days. And so, yeah, they were able to come to the doctor's appointment or the ultrasounds. And the ones that they weren't able to make it to, my doctor's office was really accommodating and let us Skype or, video chat while the ultrasound or the appointment was happening.
Yeah, same with me. With our first journey, the couple was here right at the 20-week ultrasound. And so we got to find out we were having a girl all together, my husband, the two parents, and me. And I think that was really when we started to establish that nice relationship and such a special moment. With the second journey, they didn't actually make it here during the pregnancy, but they also had a 1-year-old at home, so it was understandable.
Got it. To talk a little bit about the IVF process and taking medications. So one of the questions we have is what was the IVF process like? How did that go?
Yeah, so that was my, not fear, but that was a big thing that I thought, oh, I'm going to have to inject myself for about 6 weeks. And at first it was very intimidating. The needles were very intimidating. And I remember the first injection I did, I laid on the couch and my husband, I was like, just do it, holding a pillow, kind of freaking out. And he did it and I said, just do it already. And he was like, oh, it's already done. And I was like, I didn't even feel that. So then after that, I thought, okay, I could do this by myself. And so for me, the injections, it was more in my head of the worry and, the intimidation. But after that, it was just routine. It was part of, my nightly routine or just something I did.
Yeah, same. Yeah, as soon as the box of medication showed up, I think a lot of surrogates talk about that. You get this big box of intimidating medication, all these needles and medicine, and it's very like, oh my gosh, this is real. Once you get that first injection done, it is totally fine. And I've done it several times. I did 1 round of IVF with my first surrogacy, and then with our second journey, we did have 2 full IVF cycles that we ended up canceling right before the egg transfer or the embryo transfer. So I did do, several rounds of IVF without actually having to go through with the embryo transfer. And I would do it over and over and over again. You forget about it. It's not that bad. It's just the buildup that kind of gets most surrogates, I think.
Sure. And Keisha, to talk about that for a second, because this stuff doesn't always work out the first time as far as your embryo transfer is concerned. Can you talk a little bit about your reaction to that and your intended parents' reaction, how that felt?
Yeah, it was, so our first journey went so by the books perfect. We used a fresh cycle where the egg donor had, we kind of followed our cycles at the same time so that the eggs were fresh and then implanted in me as embryos rather than frozen. So the second time we had frozen embryos, it was almost going to be better because we didn't have to have a special timeline or anything. We could do it, with our schedules. And yeah, the first time it didn't, we got to a couple days before embryo transfer, and there was fluid in my uterus, so they were not able to put the embryos in there, and we had to cancel it. And they said, we'd retry it again another month later. And then the same thing happened that second time. And, my intended parents were kind of like, what's going on? Like, can we, how can we fix this? You know, they're kind of, it's out of their hands, it's on my body. And so it was emotional for them because they couldn't do anything for me to make me feel better, because it was my body doing that. So we worked with ORM and Oregon Reproductive Medicine, who was doing the transfer. And we tried something different. We did a natural cycle where we followed my ovulation and implanted the embryos when I ovulated, and we got twins. So it was kind of like it was meant to be that third time. So it was emotional, it was happy, it was scary, but it really worked out in the end.
Yeah. And did you have a sense of disappointment as you were going through the rest of that stuff? That must have been hard.
Yeah. I think too, the doctor at Oregon Reproductive Medicine, you know, kind of started to break it to me that my body may be done having children and that I may not be able to be a surrogate for my intended parents for their second and third children. And so it was really emotional. I think that was when, I think that was like the hardest part, was talking to my intended parents and telling them I might not be able to be your surrogate again. And they just couldn't imagine us not creating this family together, having their, you know, their other children with me as their surrogate. So it was nice to have their support. It was nice to be emotional and vulnerable together. And then to make it through it. And yeah, it was hard. I think that was definitely the most challenging part of all of my journeys.
Yeah, it's a great story. So
Thank you.
Starting off with this one with Alex first, the question here says that my partner and I are concerned about a surrogate's well-being after delivery. Have either of you experienced postpartum depression? And then there's also a question about, does NWSC provide after delivery care or mental health services? And I'll take the second one, but maybe you can take the first one.
Yeah, so after delivery, before I never, with my children, never had postpartum depression or anything. I would have like they call them baby blues, where you just feel, you know, kind of sad sometimes, and understandable when after you have a baby, all the hormones and emotion with it. So I was very vocal with my husband because he's my support after delivery, and my intended parents were very supportive and helpful. And after I had my first surrogate baby, to protect myself, felt that I should, you know, hand her to them right away. And looking back, I wish I would have, you know, kind of had that disconnect to say, you know, see who was inside of me for 9 months and have that disconnect. So with my first journey, I really tried to protect myself, thinking that if, you know, okay, she's just going to go to them and I'll be good, which in hindsight, I felt that probably wasn't the best. So when we had their other baby, I vocalized to them, you know, I would really love to hold him and to see him just for a few moments, just to have that disconnect, you know, and just see who was growing inside of me. So they were understandable of that. And after both surrogacies, there was about, you know, a 2-3 week period where I just felt kind of, you know, just trying to readjust, and my body trying to come, you know, off of all the hormones and all, like everything like that. But I definitely was supported. And even with Northwest Surrogacy Center, they did offer counseling compensation for that, which I did end up using later on, just not necessarily for the surrogacy, but just life in general at that point in my life. And it was very beneficial for me.
Yeah. And I had, I did not experience, I think I was a lot more detached and really focused on just having that time after delivery to spend with my children, because during that 9 months of carrying children for another couple, it's really draining and exhausting, and you take a lot of time away from your own children to you know, rest and take care of your body. And so as soon as I got home from the hospital and was, healed enough, I just immersed myself into activities with my children, camping and hiking and doing things that really just brought a lot of positive energy in my life. So, and I used a lot of my friends' support, and we just did so many things in the first couple months after that. I think that helped me get through any sort of behind the scenes feelings I was feeling as far as like the hormone balance and all of that. But yeah, the emotional support from my friends and family, and then as well as Northwest Surrogacy Center reaching out several times to see how I was doing. I came out of it really, really doing well.
And so just to speak on the Northwest side of things, we do arrange for psychological counseling in all parts of this process if it's desired by the surrogate. So it's something that is set aside in our trust account estimates to provide access to surrogates to that. We also do additional support, surrogate meetups where surrogates can spend time with each other. We have those both virtually and also under normal circumstances, a live version of that as well. So we're very focused on that support for surrogates as part of our program. So here's an interesting question for you from one of our attendees. Would you be comfortable attending a baby shower?
Totally. Yeah, I would. Several surrogates that I know have hosted baby showers for their intended parents. My intended parents, when they came here, we showered them with gifts, and a lot of my friends who met them during the 20-week ultrasound kind of were around for the same, the birth. So they were here, and we kind of had a lot of little celebrations right after the baby was born to kind of provide, activities and food and gifts for them. So yeah, totally would feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so wonderful. We had talked about it with my IPs, but since they were from France, trying to, we wanted to shower them with gifts and all that, but trying to get it back to France was a little difficult. So we just did a big dinner and celebrated, and I think it's beautiful.
Got it. As far as another question that it was submitted is, what kind of screening process did you go through at Northwest Surrogacy Center to become a surrogate?
Yeah, so the screening process was the initial intake form and, just more basic information, and then meeting with them in person and talking about, hopes and wants and wishes, and really getting to know one another from a surrogacy standpoint or an agency standpoint, and myself, a woman looking into surrogacy. And then we, with the psychological evaluation, that was huge. And then the home, the home when they come to your house and make sure you're living in a suitable area to be pregnant. Mm-hmm. And the medical screening too, that was another thing. I think a lot of surrogates just automatically assume they're not qualified, but I thought since I had a C-section before, I probably wouldn't be able to, but the medical screening, the psychological evaluation, the home inspection, they were very thorough. And I know that there are a lot of women that apply to be a surrogate. I don't want to say numbers or anything, but there's a lot, and just a little, a handful of women. So they're very thorough. And that was another thing with Northwest Surrogacy Center that I really liked, was not that they were just taking everyone off the street, essentially. They really want to make sure that their surrogates are quality and good. And the matching process as well was super amazing for me, because they listened to what I wanted for myself and the whole process, and really matched me with a couple that fit that. And that was, I think, going through that process took, I think, the longest to really, talk to me about the questions, and if I'd answer one way, you know, making sure that I still felt that way, you know, a month later, and just really a very thorough screening process. Keisha, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was the exact same. I think the questions that Northwest asked in the initial conversation when they called me after my intake form was submitted, those same questions continued to be brought up. You know, in our in-person meeting, in our meeting with my intended parents, they were actually in town doing their, getting their samples and everything ready here in Oregon when we got matched. So we got to meet them in person, and when we met them in person, instead of a Skype meeting, those same questions were brought up in front of them. You know, we were all able to just answer the questions and talk to them. You know, you can really tell when somebody is being honest, when, you know, they have the same feelings, they're saying the same things over and over. And you know, I think that, yeah, all of the information you said about the screening process, it was really thorough, and it did take the longest. I thought when I applied to be a surrogate, I was going to be pregnant, you know, within a month. I didn't know, but they were very thorough, and that actually made my husband feel so much better about it, because he knew that this was an agency that really cared about who they were allowing to be pregnant with another couple's child.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So another question that we have, and I'm going to preface this question a little bit with Northwest Surrogacy Center has moved to a single embryo transfer policy as far as new families coming into our program. But one of the questions from our participants is, or the audience, excuse me, is how did you decide whether to implant one or two embryos? And did that feel like a big decision at the time?
Yeah, it was a big decision. When we first met our intended parents, one of the questions Northwest had asked was, how do you feel about having multiples? And if an embryo splits and you're pregnant with triplets, how do you feel about being pregnant with triplets? And my intended parents they wanted to start with 2 embryos. They wanted us to try to have twins the first time. And I was excited about that. I kind of like to set strange goals for myself. And, you know, the idea that I could be pregnant with twins seemed like a really cool goal. Like, I want to feel 2 children inside my stomach. I thought that would just feel so magical, which it did. It was really cool. But the first time it didn't work out. Only 1 embryo took. So that was another little emotional hiccup during our first journey. But then we got pregnant with twins the second time. We tried to do 2 embryos again, thinking hopefully 1 will stick, and we had twins. So yeah, it was a good decision.
Okay. And Alex?
Yeah, so I, like Asia, always thought, you know, carrying twins, having 2 babies at the same time would be pretty amazing. So I was on board for the 2 embryo transfer, which we did the first time, and only 1 stuck. And it was in between when my first surrogate baby was born, and then the second that Northwest had changed the policy. So then it went from, you know, 2 embryos to 1. And we had talked about it because we did have a failed transfer before getting pregnant with their son. And so we had talked about, they had mentioned, you know, should we do 2 again, or, you know, and just with all of the medical and, you know, all the advice we had gotten from the ORM doctor, they decided to do 1 again. And so I was comfortable with that. But initially, yes, I was ready to carry twins.
Got it. So yeah, it's been a very complicated decision, but one that seems to be really the industry standard as far as moving forward in single embryo transfers. So one question that we've actually have 2 questions that are, I'm going to tie them into one, which is, As you look at intended parents who are getting this started, what would be a little bit of advice for them as far as their relationship with their surrogate and how to make that work?
Yeah, so, I think everybody's always kind of tiptoeing at first, trying to not push boundaries and not trying to just establish a nice friendship. And, I think you can ask as many questions as you want. And as a surrogate, I love answering questions. I want to, when my intended parents, would bring up any topic, I would go over the top telling them how I was feeling or how the IVF was going, because I want them to be involved. So although it is really awkward at first, I don't think you can I don't think you can try to be too involved. Like be as involved as you want, because I loved it.
Yeah, and for me, and advice would be, communication, talking, being open, I think is huge too. And in the matching process and Northwest Surrogacy Center, asking questions, I think that I was very open about what I wanted from intended parents. So I think when my intended parents and I came together, there was awkward moments and trying to find that groove and grow an organic relationship. But I think that, just communication is huge, to create that bond with a surrogate. And just trying to establish boundaries and all that. And a relationship can be difficult, but I think communication is huge.
Got it. And another question that we have is, what is most important to you when trying to match with an IP? Or at least what was most important to you?
What was most important for me, it was that we were just on the same page about what we wanted from this. I don't think that I could have been matched with somebody or intended parents that didn't want a close relationship, which was very important to me because I love people, I love friendship, I love connection. So for me, it was just a big part of me looking for an intended parent. And there are some standoff surrogates who just, we're all different, we all vary. But when I was going through the matching process, I definitely wanted intended parents that were, wanting a close relationship. And my IPs definitely were. And that was something in our match meeting we discussed, was what does the future look like for all of us?
Yeah, same. Yeah, my husband was the first one to really say, I want to have a relationship with the couple if we're going to have a baby for them. And I was kind of like, yeah, that sounds good. I really didn't quite know what I wanted. But as soon as I met Alex and my intended parents, I just instantly knew that was what I wanted. I wanted a relationship. I wanted to be part of those children's lives. We talk about us sending our children over to France for a summer, when they're a little bit older, and vice versa. So it's really nice.
Got it. So I'm going to paraphrase a question that somebody asked here. So, and this is true when I talk with intended parents as well, that some intended parents have concerns that their surrogate is going to be smoking or drinking, or somebody in their family or a household will be doing that. And we know everybody's different, but as a surrogate, how would you address those concerns?
Yeah, I think it really starts with communication. And, if you start to establish a good relationship where you're texting and messaging and emailing, and, I always made sure that I was putting myself in healthy situations, and, I wasn't going out and partying or, going out into dangerous situations. And I think my intended parents knew that because we talked all the time. We would talk about what our weekends were like and what we're up to. And, I think really communication is going to be the best way to to feel confident that your surrogate is doing what you hope they're doing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Keisha. Trust is huge in this process. I mean, and from an intended parent standpoint, you're putting so much of your time and emotion and, financial situation into this. And of course, you'd want, to have a surrogate that is not doing any of those things. But trust and communication, once you get to know somebody and you can, you're able to see their environment and how they live, I think it really helps establish that trust and that knowing from a surrogate standpoint is, and I'm very open and transparent, and I wanted my intended parents to know from the get-go, this is who I am, this is how I live, and I respect you, of course, and just that common bond that you have in relationship.
So, and in your experience, the other surrogates that do you feel that that's pretty universally respected as far as those boundaries are concerned, and in that type of behavior?
Absolutely. On the Northwest Surrogacy Center Facebook group, I feel like all of us surrogates that have been approved through Northwest Surrogacy Center really, hold each other accountable. We're in this together, but we're also making sure that, that everyone, is doing everything, even with medications. It's a process. You have to support other women that are going through it and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to.
Yeah.
But for the most part, a lot of surrogates who are approved, I feel like, are the best. They're not just going to do anything to put themselves or the baby in harm.
Right. Yeah. And I think, speaking about the we have meetups in person most of the time when COVID's not a thing, and I've met a lot of surrogates that have done it, are in the process, or are just starting, and we all just have a very similar drive, which is we want to create a family. We're doing this to benefit our lives, benefit another couple's lives. And yeah, I can't say I've ever met a surrogate that I felt should not have been a surrogate. So yeah, it's really good.
Okay, thanks. So I've got one last question kind of here before we wrap up, but and that is from participants. Many surrogates mention that they enjoy being pregnant. Can you elaborate about what about being pregnant that motivates you to continue helping future families?
Oh yeah. For me, I'm passionate about birth and pregnancy and all of it, as I'm a doula. So for me, my pregnancies were, I think a majority of surrogates, yes, say that their pregnancies were great. Not to say there isn't the ups and downs of pregnancy, morning sickness and being tired, and like Keisha was saying earlier, you kind of don't have as much time or energy with your own children. But for me, pregnancy is beautiful. I feel really good when I'm pregnant, and I just love being pregnant. So for me, it's just easy. I know that there are a lot of women that don't enjoy pregnancy, but I'm fortunate. I'm one of those that do.
Yeah, and I've had 4 pregnancies, and for all of them, I was very sick with morning sickness for 4 to 5 months. I would get heartburn the last part of the pregnancy, and just have the really tough pregnancy symptoms. That didn't deter me. I still felt so, just that feeling of having just growing life. It's the best thing ever. And I tell people all the time that I would continue to be a surrogate and continue to be pregnant as long as I could. However, I need to be healthy for my children, and it would not be healthy for me to do another pregnancy, but I love it.
So in regards to the process of surrogacy and families who are having a hard time, whether it's with fertility or something else. When you're looking at surrogacy, do you have any advice for them as far as what would you tell an intended parent that's struggling with all this and is thinking about surrogacy as an option?
Yeah, I actually just met with some friends that are in this space of trying to figure out, they've tried IVF and fertility treatment themselves and kind of are looking at the surrogacy route. And they're very open to that. But for me in that space, it's knowing that they're not alone, that there is a lot of couples and people that are struggling, and that I just say, don't give up on your dream of becoming a parent. Surrogacy is absolutely a way to make that happen, and just knowing that they're not alone.
Yeah, and also that, by bringing in a surrogate into kind of the circle, if it's something that you're interested in as far as having a close relationship, it can be a relationship that lasts your whole life. And with the matching process, you can really be matched with somebody that you just click with, and you will spend the rest of your life sharing pictures of your children with and caring about. And yeah, it's huge.
Got it. So last comment that we have here, and we do have to wrap things up, is from our participants, is thanking both of you. And I also want to thank you, Alex and Kasia, for really being here and sharing your experiences with us. Again, it's something that I could never do justice, and we really do value your input and your insight into all of this. And to all of our attendees, I want to thank you for the great questions. I'd be happy to speak with each and all of you if you have further questions about Northwest Surrogacy Center, about the process in general. Please stay safe and healthy out there, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you.